excited by all of the enthusiasm, and I'm also excited to be on the table with alumna from City Year. I feel like I should have worn red today because I feel really left out. But excited to know that we've got folks who are really doing service here in Philly and can share that experience with you too. So I speak really quickly. Feel free to stop me if there's like a word you don't know. Write down questions about acronyms. There's lots of acronyms in our field, and so if you're not sure about a word, just pop out, say what does that mean real quickly, and we'll try to clarify. And then I'm happy to stay after and ask more questions, and then hopefully this will all make sense. So the question is, so you want to start a nonprofit, and my question to you is, are you nuts? I've been working in the field of nonprofits for 25 years in a variety of ways, everything from as a youth worker to an executive director and serving on boards of nonprofits and foundations. And I think they're very valuable, but there also can be a little bit of an insidious framework for the way we do our work. And part of what I want to challenge or ask us to think about is, as you're thinking about starting a nonprofit, trying to critique that a little bit and also think about alternatives, because that's part of what I think is underlying the passion behind what you want to do, is that you have a passion for something, and right now it seems like starting a nonprofit is the right way to do that, but I'm going to suggest that that could be, and there might be other ways to think about it. So this is a both-and kind of presentation. So we've talked about this. So why on earth do you want to start your own nonprofit organization? True or false? There are over 15,000 nonprofit organizations in Philly. True or false? That is true. This was a piece of data from 2010. So there's probably even more nonprofits in Philadelphia than 15,000. True or false? You have to register your nonprofit organization as a legal entity if you want to enjoy the benefits and headaches of a nonprofit. So you can't just say, I want to start when there's a legal process. Okay, good, true. It usually takes 2 to 12 months to get your paperwork done, and it's usually not a one and done. You've got to go back and forth with the IRS and other government agencies in order to really get your paperwork approved. True or false? You have to renew your status every year. True, false, not sure. It is true. It is also very common that thousands of nonprofits lose their licenses every year for a variety of reasons, one of which is people forget to refile. It is an arduous process, and people simply forget to do it. And that could be a cause for losing your nonprofit status. And so I just answered that question. The answer is more than 100. It's actually 1,000, more than 1,000 according to the IRS. So how would you answer these questions? Do you like to have difficult conversations? Be responsible for other people? Ask people for large sums of money? Do things that other people think are a good idea even though you know they're not a good idea or effective? Do you like to write? Do you like to beg and borrow? Do you like to work directly with your constituents, youth, seniors, animals, etc., and work really hard all the time? I mean it, all the time. So I heard people talk about, I like to work with animals, I like to work with young people. When you start a nonprofit and you become an executive in a nonprofit, you are less likely to do the work that called you to this field in the first place. You are less likely to work directly with the people you care about the most and whose lives you want to impact. You are now responsible for an entire ecology of other individuals. Board members, community stakeholders, politicians, family members, the people you serve, and on and on and on. So I want to not burst anybody's bubble, but sort of peel back the layers for people to understand what it really means to take on a nonprofit and to run and own and manage a nonprofit organization. These are just some of the things you need to ask yourself if you'd like to do these things. Because if these things are hard for you, then running a nonprofit is going to be hard. Trying to manage someone who's not on time, who's done something illegal, someone who has a funder's ask you to do something that you think is unethical. Those are all things that you have to deal with, while the babies that you want to hug and hold and nurture, and the animals who are being dropped off at your shelter, you don't get to do that anymore. Those are not the things you get to do when you run a nonprofit. So common mistakes people make when they're starting a nonprofit and in life too, is that they believe they need to have an actual physical space, a space of their own. So I'll talk in a minute about some alternatives to what I think could be a solution to some of these challenges and mistakes that people make. I think there's a belief that you are the only person in the world who's offering underwater basket weaving for seniors only in a daycare setting, meaning that you think you have a unique idea that no one else has. You probably have a unique way that is unique to how you operate and function in the world, and that makes it special, and that's really valid and important. But there are also lots of people who run animal shelters and daycare centers. So you've got to think about what makes yours unique or different, or is it the essence of you that could add something different to someone else who's already established an organization? That we forget that the system is made to make us compete as opposed to collaborate. And so These nonprofits are designed, unfortunately, because of our financial structures, not just to give us money and say, go do what you love to do, but we often end up doing things that are antithetical and opposition to what we love to do. There's a lot of encouragement around partnership and collaboration, but when you're only given 2 weeks to write a proposal and only 250 words in which to do it, there's not room for authenticity. And a lot of what I'm pulling out from your passion and your desire to do this work is something authentic in you. And so there's something about the nonprofit industrial complex that sort of dampens our authenticity, and I want to just call that out there. And I think people lose sight of what they love to do. You are called to this field because of the individual connections. This work is interrelational. And I think that's why we get called to this work. Those relationships tend to change when we have to then manage all of them from a different position. So instead of starting a nonprofit or a new nonprofit, consider this, filling in a gap. So is there a church or a mosque in your neighborhood, for example, that's not being utilized after services? Can you utilize that space to make it a more rich, ongoing, deeper use of that space over a period of time? Is the community center not being utilized? Is there a park or public playground that has been vacant, and could you find out how to partner with your council person to use that during the summer? So you don't have to go get a physical building. They are expensive, they are a pain to deal with, and it is going to take more time than you realize in terms of having a physical space. Start a chapter, right? Have a chapter in other people's organizations. Find someone who needs what you offer. So if you offer STEM, and I've got a group of young girls who have expressed interest in science, but I don't have anyone on my staff who can teach STEM, I want to hire you. So be a traveling service. Go to where people are and learn how to identify where the gaps are and show up to fill the gap. I can't tell you how many times people say, I can't find enough teenagers to do this, or I want to run this program, but I don't know how. So if we did more real, authentic listening and collaborating and trying to fill services and gaps for each other rather than recreate the same thing, then we can go a lot further when we go together. And then the last thing to think about is hire a fiscal sponsor. Instead of going through the process of starting your own nonprofit, get what's called a fiscal sponsor. So places like Urban Affairs Coalition, Culture Works, what they do is they take on the entire financial management, I shouldn't say financial management, the administrative management of your organization. So they'll take care of the filing of your 990 every year. They will take care of all of your payroll forms. They will do all the administrative things that take hours and hours and hours, the accounting. They'll set up a QuickBooks for you. So those are the things that take hours of really specified time. And if you don't have that yourself or can't afford that, a fiscal sponsor can help because they'll also absorb some of the legal liability in terms of insurance. So think about how to identify a fiscal sponsor. And if you must start your own nonprofit, and I get it, some of you are going to do that anyway, and I encourage you to do that if that's your calling, get a good accountant. Make sure that you work with someone who really understands how to manage your numbers, and you'll start with an accountant and a bookkeeper as you're growing. Then you'll need a chief financial officer, you'll need a controller, you'll need to grow your finances as your financial support as your finances grow. Learn how to create, develop, manage, support, and sustain a board. Nonprofit organizations are legally required to have a board. And those are a whole other set of individuals who you have to manage. And they usually don't know how to be on a board very well. It's one of the hardest jobs, I think, to do effectively and run an organization. So you imagine you have an organization with 30 staff. You also have 5 to 12 other adults whose hands you have to hold to help them guide the direction of the organization. It is a huge job that people unfortunately fail at often because we haven't really figured out how to do it well collectively. Do a needs assessment. Look at your neighborhood. Look at where you live. Is there already a daycare center? Is there a dog walking service? Is there a way for people of different faiths to come together? If there isn't, then figure out how you can fill the gap. But if there is, figure out how you can contribute to what is already happening there. Maybe you bring a different perspective. Maybe it's a criminal justice perspective. It's a women in sports equity lens that you bring. And then start in small steps. Funders want to fund things that exist. They don't want to fund an idea. So have something to show. So it's my mentoring program that I started in high school. I'm now looking to develop it out further, and I want to partner with someone else and get additional support. Last 3 things. Get a mentor. Find a peer group. Build your network. Stay relevant. And that means know what the most important topics are in early childhood education right now. What is the law saying about having chickens in Philadelphia as a pet? Know those things so that you can be relevant and contribute to the conversations. And then learn from others. Other people have done this before. Find out where they made mistakes. Find out where they have learned, and maybe go back to number 1 and maybe ask them to be their mentor. Ask them to be your mentor. And then last but not least, share with other people what you've learned. So good luck. I do really mean it. And I apologize if that threw off anything that you all were going to say.
I think you're next.